The letter arrived Monday morning, and by 9, the HOA president stood in my driveway pointing at my roof, calmly informing me those solar panels had 30 days to disappear. By 4 that same afternoon, the association's attorney was already on the phone with my lawyer asking, in a very careful voice, how this entire situation might quietly disappear. A semi-retired electrical engineer who spent 24 years designing renewable energy infrastructure before settling into peaceful retirement in Scottsdale. I moved with my wife Sandra to Crestwood Pines, a quiet Arizona community where the sunlight hits rooftops so perfectly that any competent engineer instantly recognizes the obvious potential. The moment I saw that roof under the desert sun, my brain began calculating panel angles, power yield projections, and the quiet financial satisfaction solar energy always promises. I am not an argumentative man, but engineers understand systems, and the legal system protecting solar installations in Arizona is one I had studied carefully. When Rod Feller appeared in my driveway pointing aggressively at my roof, it took me less than 90 seconds to realize something important. Either he had never read the state's solar rights statute, or he had read it and assumed it somehow did not apply to him. In my experience, those are simply two different versions of the same problem, and both usually end the exact same way. Rod Feller was 52, president of the Crestwood Pines HOA, owner of 3 successful auto detailing shops around Scottsdale. Success had given him confidence, authority, and apparently the belief that HOA board power extended far beyond the legal limits actually written into Arizona law. He spoke with the direct tone of a man used to giving orders, a tone that assumes compliance before the conversation even begins. Standing in my driveway under the Arizona sun, he handed me an official violation notice printed on HOA letterhead. According to the letter, my solar panels violated community architectural standards by altering the roofline aesthetic expected within Crestwood Pines. The document gave me 30 days to remove the panels or face fines of $150 per day. He delivered this message with the calm certainty of someone who had watched homeowners surrender to HOA threats many times before. What Rod did not know was that I had installed those panels 8 months earlier with extraordinary preparation. Before installation, I had spent hours reading the Crestwood Pines, CC and Rs, line by line, carefully examining every clause related to exterior property modifications. I also studied Arizona Revised Statute, Section 331816, the state law that protects homeowners' rights to install solar energy systems. That statute states clearly that HOAs cannot prohibit solar installations and may only impose reasonable restrictions that do not significantly reduce efficiency or increase cost. In other words, the law had already anticipated homeowners associations attempting exactly the sort of thing Rod was attempting. Knowing that I designed my installation carefully to eliminate every possible aesthetic argument, the solar panels were mounted on the rear slope of my roof, facing south and east for optimal production. From street level, they were completely invisible, hidden from both passing traffic and neighboring homes. The system was installed with full city permits and passed inspection by Scottsdale officials before the project was completed. Only after installation was finished did I formally notify the HOA as required by the community rules. One submitted photographs, city permits, and even a short explanation referencing the state's solar protection statute. The management company acknowledged receiving the notice and said the board would review it during their next meeting. For 8 quiet months, I heard absolutely nothing from the HOA. Then on that Monday morning, Rod appeared in my driveway, carrying a violation notice demanding removal. I read the document slowly while he stood beside me, waiting for an argument. Instead of arguing, I simply asked whether the board had reviewed Arizona Revised Statute 331816 before issuing the notice. Rod confidently replied that HOA architectural standards superseded general state guidelines within a planned community. That sentence told me everything I needed to know about how much legal research had gone into the board's decision. I thanked him politely, went inside the house, and made a phone call. The attorney I called was Vivian Cross, a Scottsdale lawyer specializing in real estate and HOA law. I had retained Vivian shortly after moving into the neighborhood specifically because I knew solar installations sometimes attract unnecessary disputes. In fact, she had already reviewed my installation plan months earlier, before the project even began. When I explained Rod's visit, Vivian was not surprised and certainly not worried. She simply asked me to document every detail of the encounter, including the exact words Rod had used. Then she began drafting a response letter to the HOA board. That letter would become the most important for pages Rod Feller would read all year. Vivian cited the solar rights statute in full, explaining clearly that HOAs cannot force removal of legally installed solar systems. She noted that my panels were city-approved, invisible from the street, and fully compliant with every reasonable aesthetic requirement. She also reminded the board that Arizona law allows homeowners to recover attorney fees when HOAs violate solar protection statutes. That meant if the dispute reached court and the HOA lost, they would pay both their own legal bills and mine. Vivian ended the letter with a simple demand. The violation notice must be rescinded in writing within 5 business days, or litigation would begin immediately afterward. She sent the letter at precisely to 17 in the afternoon. At 4 o'clock that same day, her phone rang. On the line was the HOA's attorney, community association lawyer named Stuart Kilp. Stuart had read Vivian's letter carefully before making that call. Interestingly, he did not attempt to defend the board's legal position, did not argue the architectural standards clause or claim the statute contained ambiguous wording. Instead, he asked a single practical question. Was there a path to resolving the situation without filing a lawsuit? Vivian explained clearly that resolution required 2 things only. First, the violation notice must be formally rescinded in writing. Second, the HOA must confirm it would not pursue enforcement related to my solar installation again. If those conditions were met within 5 business days, the matter would end there. Stuart said he would speak with the board and call back. The next morning he phoned again with an update. The board had held an emergency meeting the previous evening. During that meeting, the members reviewed Arizona Revised Statute 331816 with their attorney present. The vote to rescind the violation notice was unanimous. That afternoon, a formal rescission letter arrived at Vivian's office. It stated that the violation notice had been issued in error after consultation with legal counsel. It also confirmed that no enforcement action regarding my solar panels would ever be pursued again. The entire dispute had lasted just over 30 hours. The quiet satisfaction of a system functioning exactly the way it was designed to function. The law said what it said. The documentation proved what it proved. The outcome simply followed the facts. However, the story did not end with that letter. Vivian had included one additional recommendation in her original response. She suggested the board review its enforcement procedures to ensure future solar installations were evaluated according to state law. 3 weeks later, every homeowner in Crestwood Pines received a community notice. The board had updated its architectural review policies regarding solar energy systems. Future applications would be reviewed specifically under Arizona Revised Statute 331816. Before any enforcement action could occur, the notice did not mention my name. But everyone in the neighborhood understood exactly what had caused the change. Soon afterward, 2 neighbors contacted me about installing their own solar panels. Both had delayed their projects because they feared HOA enforcement. After the policy change, both moved forward with installation. Neither of them ever received a violation notice. Months later, Rod Feller quietly finished his term as HOA president and did not run again. Another homeowner later joined the board and reviewed past enforcement fines issued under Rod's leadership. Several homeowners even received refund checks for penalties that should never have been issued. My solar panels remain on my roof today, producing more electricity than my house consumes most afternoons. Utility bills that once averaged $240 now range between $12 and $30, depending on the season. Every time I see that number, I remember Rod standing in my driveway that Monday morning pointing at my roof. I also remember how quickly the situation changed after someone finally read the law. Preparation turned what could have been a long legal battle into a 31-hour correction of a mistake. And sometimes the most powerful response to authority is simply knowing the rules better than the person trying to enforce them.